Yo, what is good, everyone? Welcome to the Fantasy Football Prodigy channel, and in this video, I am going to give you my top starts of the week for week 13 of the 2022 fantasy football season. Before we do that, please make sure to drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel for more fantasy football content. With that being said, let's get right into our starts of the week. We're going to kick it off with quarterback. If you need a big performance out of someone at the quarterback position to make that playoff push, and you have Justin Herbert on your squad, I would force him into your lineup. He is basically a must start this week. He had a slow start to the season. He had some missing weapons, but first and foremost, he does have Keenan Allen back, and that is huge. We saw last week with Keenan Allen on the field against the Cardinals. He had almost 30 fantasy points. He was the quarterback 3 on the week. Now in week 13, he gets arguably the best matchup in all of fantasy for quarterbacks. They should be putting up a ton of points. Austin Eckler, their running back, will also get some production, but a lot of that will come through the air, as Justin Herbert will pass him the ball. Last I heard, they are going to be without Mike Williams, so that does hurt. But I think Keenan Allen might be a little bit more important to Justin Herbert's production than Mike Williams, who's more of a field stretcher, whereas Keenan Allen is someone that Herbert is going to go to move the ball down the field. They still have Josh Palmer. They got Carter. They have Gerald, Everett. They have Eckler out of the backfield. And like I said, it is a great matchup. So I'm only bringing up Justin Herbert because throughout this year, you might have kind of forgot about him as a nice play just because he's been so up and down. But I think week 13 is a week that you can put him in your lineup and expect great things. So I talked about that Raiders matchup. Now it's time to talk about the Detroit Lions matchup, okay? And this game between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Detroit Lions is a matchup that I'm going to be talking about a lot in this video because these are two offenses that can both score points and two defenses that cannot really stop anything. So the Detroit Lions are giving up a ton of points to the quarterback position, and Trevor Lawrence gets to take on that defense, and he has actually been really solid this year. Yes, he has had a few games where he has been a complete dud, like week 4, week 8, even week 5 against Houston. You see those performances and you might be kind of worried, but in week 13 against the Detroit Lions, I highly doubt that we see one of those dud performances, and he has been great for fantasy outside of those few weeks. He actually does have weapons to utilize in this offense that we will talk about a little bit later. But long story short, I think that this game is going to be high scoring, a ton of offense, not a lot of defense. And I think Trevor Lawrence is a good bet to throw at least a couple touchdowns. And he does have upside to maybe score 3+ touchdowns. And then before we get on to the skill position players and talk a little bit more about that Jacksonville-Detroit game, I do have 2 more starts of the week. These guys are more of streaming options. Maybe if you're in a 2-quarterback league, or you have an injury, or maybe you could put these guys in like a DraftKings or fantasy daily lineup, okay? So we're going to start with Mike White of the New York Jets. This is far from a safe play. He has had some good games and bad games throughout his short career where he's only played a few games. We can take a look back at 2021. He had this big game in week 8 where he was a quarterback too, but outside of that, it was dreadful, okay? So in 2021, he did that. In 2022, we're seeing kind of a similar thing possibly playing out where he just came off a huge game in a good matchup against the Bears. Can he keep it going, or will he fall flat on his face? I don't know. So I'm just bringing his name up because he's taken on the Minnesota Vikings, and this Jets offense does have some weapons to utilize on the field for Mike White. So when you factor in the matchup, coming off a big game, the weapons he has at his disposal, I think that this game in general might be somewhat high scoring if the Vikings can kind of overcome that Jets defense that has been pretty good this year. So I think Mike White is a nice little streaming option if you are in a pinch. So my second streaming start of the week is going to be Jimmy Garoppolo of the 49ers. So Mike White is a little bit more of a high risk, high reward type of play. But if you need someone that's going to be reliable and get you about 15 to 20 points, I think Jimmy Garoppolo is that guy. And I do think he actually does have a little bit of upside. We saw in week 11 against the Cardinals when he had 4 touchdown passes, was a quarterback 5 on the week. I think that this game could be a high-scoring offensive sort of shootout. Obviously, the 49ers have a solid defense, but I don't know realistically how well they are going to be able to stop the Miami Dolphins. So I think this could be a scenario where you got 2 good quarterbacks, and each side is loaded up with offensive weapons. So this could be a back and forth. But either way, the Dolphins' defense really isn't that great at all. They're a good matchup for fantasy. So I think Jimmy G is a nice little streaming option. It's kind of funny. I was going to make him a start of the week for week 11, and At the last second, I was like, nah, I'm not going to do that. And then he went off. I made him a start of the week in week 12, and it was just a low-scoring 13-0 win. There are going to be more than 13 points scored in this game, so I think this is a nice bounce-back opportunity for Jimmy. Now we're going to move on to running back. We're going to talk about Aaron Jones, running back of the Green Bay Packers. He has historically been just up and down as a fantasy player. He'll have a big week and then a really poor week. He's been the same exact thing this year. I was hoping he'd be a little bit more involved in the passing game with the loss of Davante Adams. That would kind of stabilize his production, but it's still been quite inconsistent. But the last 3 weeks, he's been really good for fantasy. And in week 13, I do expect that to continue. Back in week 2 against the same Bears team, he had 30.5 points, the running back 2 on the week, and they only gave him 15 carries and 3 targets. If you watch that game, every time he touched the ball, he was just doing whatever he wanted. So we do have a little bit of a quarterback situation with Aaron Rodgers dealing with an injury. Regardless of if he starts, if he's 100%, if Aaron Jones or if Jordan Love starts, I don't really care. I think Aaron Jones is going to get some work in this game, and he should be productive with it. And the Bears defense, they're not looking very good. They traded away some of their key players. They're in a bit of a rebuilding stage. So I think this is a great spot for Aaron Jones to offer good production, and he could have another vintage blow-up game. He has 2 running back 2 overall finishes on the season. I'm not going to lock in an overall running back 2 finish just because statistically that's tough to do, but if he did it, I wouldn't be shocked. Maybe even running back 1 on the week. And on the other side of the ball, in the same game, I'm going to talk about David Montgomery, running back of the Bears. So the Packers are also a pretty good matchup for running backs in fantasy football. David Montgomery probably doesn't have the same upside as Aaron Jones does, but I think he is a nice, solid, high-end running back to play in week 13 against the Packers. On the other side of the field for the Bears, Justin Fields, their quarterback, is also dealing with an injury. So you can make these arguments all day that, okay, maybe if the quarterback is 100%, it'll help the offense, even if the running back doesn't get as many opportunities. Or if the quarterback isn't 100%, or it's a backup, they'll just run through the running back even more potentially. Either way, I just think Aaron Jones and David Montgomery, they're both quality players. And in this game, I think with the matchups, we could see some production on the ground for both teams. So, like I said, Montgomery, fire him up as a running back 2. And finally, we have made it back to this Detroit-Jacksonville matchup. At running back, I'm going to recommend starting Travis Etienne Jr. He's coming off of an injury scare in week 12. He got injured early in that game. They say he's good to go for week 13. And in week 12, I think he could have gone back in the game, but it's not like Jacksonville's really competing for anything. So I think they were playing it safe with their future star running back. So at this point of the year, when some of these teams are out of playoff contention, it's always a little bit risky because if a player does get injured, a team might be more likely to play it safe, if they have nothing to play for, versus a team that's fighting for playoff positioning or just to make the playoffs. So I'm just strictly looking at the player and the matchup here. Detroit is a great matchup for fantasy running backs and just offenses in general. And Travis Etienne, he has been awesome for fantasy of late. Since James Robinson has been shipped out, it's been all Travis Etienne. I'm surprised they don't use him more through the air. It's largely his production is coming on the ground, but that is no worry. He should be able to run on Detroit, and I just think Jacksonville and Detroit, like I said, they're both going to put up points in this game. So Travis Etienne, with his talent, with the matchup, with the high expected point total, I think you could throw him in there. Monitor the news just to make sure he's not on like a snap count or anything with that injury. But last I heard, as of this recording, which is December 2nd, 2022, Friday, about 7 p.m. Central Time, that he's good to go. So I'd fire him up. All right, now we're going to move on to wide receiver. I talked about Justin Herbert. I mentioned Keenan Allen a little bit, but I'm going to talk about him a little bit more here. He is one of my wide receiver starts of the week for the Chargers. The start of the year, the first half of the year, was pretty much lost because he got injured. He came back. He had to miss more time, just getting injured again. But last week, it looked like he was fully back. He was on the field. The last couple of weeks, he's seen 8 and 7 targets. He got in the end zone last week. And this week, he gets the Raiders. I think Herbert is going to be chucking the ball all over the field. It's a great matchup for offenses in general, especially through the air. Keenan Allen, he's not the type of player like a Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson or Tyreek Hill where he's going to go out there and catch like 200 yards or 2 touchdowns typically. Like maybe he'll get a couple touchdowns in a fluky fashion, but I think he's a nice safe bet for close to, 7 to 10 targets, just depending on how the game goes. And he should see solid yardage. And if he gets in the end zone, you're going to be especially thrilled. but he is a nice safe play. I like him as a nice locked-in wide receiver 2 for week 13. I think you'll be happy that you started him. And now I'm going back to that Detroit-Jacksonville game. You already know what I think about the offense. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I'm going to go with Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver of the Lions, as one of my wide receiver starts of the week. He's just an awesome player. He had a little bit of a lull in the middle of the season. He got injured. Didn't play week 4. Week 5, he comes back. And then the game I was thinking of was week 7, actually, against Dallas, where he saw 1 target, caught it for 4 yards, and then left with a concussion that I don't even remember if it was actually a concussion. He just displayed concussion symptoms. So if you have him on your team, you might be kind of thinking like, man, he's kind of burnt me this year, but he's still so talented. In the last few weeks, he's really gotten back on track, and it's a great matchup. I expect a high-scoring total in this game, so fire him up. He's a wide receiver 1. Next up, in the same game, I'm going with Zay Jones of the Jacksonville Jaguars. He is questionable as of this recording. Just monitor the news. If it's looking like the injury is bad, it could limit him. Maybe pivot away from him. But coming off of a huge game where he went 11 for 145, wide receiver 5 on the week. Sort of his role this year in fantasy has been a spot start type of guy. Someone you could put in there, and he's going to get 40 to 60 yards, a handful of catches. He's just very involved in this offense. Not a big touchdown scorer. I believe only has 1 receiving touchdown on the year. You don't like to see that, but it would not shock me in week 13 if he gets in the end zone. Just because, like I said, lots of points, not a lot of defense being played most likely. I think he's a solid play. And in addition to Zay Jones, I also want to talk about Christian Kirk. I am investing a lot in this Jacksonville offense. And it's possible, there's only one football. Only one player can, get yardage at the same time. So someone might end up kind of being a letdown. But I just want to bring them all up because I think in this game there's a lot of fantasy potential, and you got to take your shot in those high-scoring games. So if you got Christian Kirk or Zay Jones, I think those guys are both players that you can definitely play. Christian Kirk, he's been up and down, but he's had some big games this year. Just like I said with Zay Jones, high-scoring. It's a good matchup. Hopefully not a lot of defense will be played. So I think this is a great spot where he has a solid chance to have one of his better games, one of his more explosive games like he's had a few times this year. And guys, I don't know what to tell you. I'm feeling wide receiver happy tonight. There's a few more wide receivers, actually a couple more wide receivers that I want to talk about. 2 rookies, okay? So the first rookie is Garrett Wilson of the New York Jets. I said you could play Mike White as a streamer. Listen, Zach Wilson, he could not get it done. He could not get the ball to these guys. But when it's been Joe Flacco or Mike White, Garrett Wilson has had success for fantasy. So even if Mike White, let's say he falls on his face, I still think Garrett Wilson will get his, be a nice solid play. Wide receivers always have their ups and downs just by the nature of the position. It's not like running back where you have these guys that are locked in for 15 to 20 touches. They're probably going to produce most weeks. The wide receiver, a lot can happen between the ball being snapped, quarterback taking the snap, throwing the ball down the field, all these players, hands up in the face. There's all these things that can happen. But Garrett Wilson, he's talented. It's a great matchup. I think he's going to be a great player. I wanted to draft him in Dynasty. I just didn't have a first-round pick. I wanted to draft him or Chris Olave. Traded my pick away because I'm trying to win a Dynasty championship, and this just turned into me crying about my Dynasty team. But listen, I think that you can start him like a nice little wide receiver too. It's a little risky just because he's a rookie. The Jets offense, we don't know how Mike White is going to play, but I think he's definitely got a ton of upside, and I would rather play him over a guy that you're hoping for like 6 points out of. So I would fire him up. And my final wide receiver start of the week, another rookie. It's going to be Christian Watson of the Green Bay Packers. I don't know how he's doing it. He's just an absolute athletic freak. He only has 4 receptions each of the previous 3 games, but he has 6 touchdowns over that span. Now, if you will notice, 3 touchdowns in week 10, 2 touchdowns in week 11, 1 touchdown in week 12. So if trends continue, he will not score a touchdown. So that is a complete, there's no logic or science based on that trend, but just take it for what you will. But I think he's going to break this trend. I think he will get in the end zone. I know it's crazy. It's hard to predict touchdowns, but I could just definitely see him in this matchup against the Bears that the Packers have just historically dominated. I think he's going to get his. He just needs one play. He just needs one big play, okay? And Jordan Love is the one who threw Christian Watson that big long bomb touchdown last week. It wasn't anything fancy. It was just a little crossing route. Just the safety or the defensive back just took a bad angle. Because normally you think you can get to a spot, you think you can beat the guy to the spot, but with Christian Watson, it's a whole different ballgame. That dude is fast. Like that defensive back did not know what happened. All of a sudden, he just took a bad angle, and Watson was gone. No one was going to catch him. So when you're that much of a freak as an athlete in this matchup against the Bears, I think he's a good bet to have a big game. Obviously, he's seeing 8-6 targets. That's good. You'll take that. You would hope for a little more than 4 receptions each week, but eventually he probably will have a game where he's a bit of a bust, but he's hot. I think you've got to keep rolling with him against the Bears. And at tight end, I'm going to go with 2 guys. We'll try to keep it short here because I talk so much about wide receivers. I'm going to go with George Kittle of the 49ers. They're taking on the Dolphins. Tight ends can find success against the Miami Dolphins. The tight end position is gross, and I think George Kittle has potential to have a big game. Most tight ends do not have the upside that Kittle has. George Kittle does have his games, especially this year, where he kind of disappears, but this is a game that I could see being a bit of a shootout, and I think Kittle will be utilized in this game. Last week against the Saints, it was ugly, but that is a tougher matchup for tight ends. Previous week in a great matchup, 4 for 84, 2 touchdowns, tight end 2 on the week. Unless you have one of those really top-tier guys like a Kelsey or Andrews, I would probably be firing up George Kittle. And finally, we're going to talk about Dalton Schultz. Listen, all offseason, I was telling you guys, draft Dalton Schultz. My league mates, they made fun of me. It was a bad start to the year. Dak got hurt. Dalton Schultz was dealing with his own injuries, but both players are back. They're 100%, and it's been great for fantasy. Week 8, he was the tight end 9, and then week 10, he was the tight end 3. Week 11, he played my unbelievable Minnesota Vikings. Let's ignore the fact that my Vikings lost 3-40, but let's focus on the fact that they shut down someone who's been a top 10 tight end each of the other 3 weeks outside of that game. So, full Vikings, but he got back on track against the Giants. He was the tight end 1. I mean, it was 4 for 31. He got in the end zone twice. That probably won't. It's a little fluky, but most tight ends can't even score 2 touchdowns. And I'm just going to say this right now, okay? In the draft, I was getting flamed by my league mates for Dalton Schultz not having upside. Bro, so they're saying draft Kelsey or just wait till the last round. So you mean to tell me you'd rather start, I don't even know, random Evan Ingram type of guy? Like, no, Dalton Schultz, he had, even last year, bro, tight end 1, tight end 6, tight end, double digits, 14 points, 16, 18, 15, but he doesn't have upside. Get out of here with that. Dalton Schultz is amazing. He's always slept on. I might buy a Dalton Schultz jersey. All right, so those are my starts of the week for week 13. If you made it this far, please make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel. Now we're going to quickly look back at week 12 and see what we did well and what we did not do so. So my starts of the week last week 12. At quarterback, I had Justin Herbert, and that was a great call. He was the quarterback 3 on the week, almost 30 points in fantasy. Love that. I also said to start Geno Smith, and he was a top 12. He was a quarterback 1, almost 20 points in fantasy. But watching that game, it was a little bit disappointing. He had a few turnovers. I was hoping for a big blow up game. So technically, those were 2 good calls, but I was hoping for more. And then Jimmy Garoppolo was my other start of the week. They just didn't really need to utilize him against the Saints. Shut him out. I wish I would have made him a start of the week the previous week like I planned on, but of course I make him a start of the week the game after his 4 touchdown game when he goes out and has 1 touchdown. So that's annoying, but he's a start of the week this week, so I'm just going to keep riding him. Pause. All right, next up, at running back last week I said to start Ken Walker. Not much for yardage, but he got in the end zone twice. He was a running back 1, 16 points, so we'll take it. We'll count that as a nice little win. Same thing with Jeff Wilson. He was a nice solid play, but I was hoping for more. Kind of like with Geno. He didn't really, 13 for 39, but luckily he got in the end. Got lucky there. 11.7 half PPR, which is the scoring that I'm going off of here. Latavius Murray was another start of the week for me. Listen, he was the running back 30 on the week, but I even said, this isn't a guy that's, gonna win your week. I said, this is someone that you can put out there in a pinch with injuries or whatever. And I don't believe there were any bye weeks for week 12 for the week of Thanksgiving. So he was a running back 30 on a week with no bye weeks, but would climb the ranking if there were no bye weeks, obviously. And he put up 10 points in half PPR. That's kind of what I said to expect out of the guy. said, he's gonna see the volume. It's a decent matchup. He had nearly 100 rushing yards, so we're gonna take that. If you're starting a guy like Latavius Murray, that obviously the only bigger upside than that is if he would have tacked on a touchdown, probably from like the 1 yard line. Another guy that really worked out that I said to start was Rachaad White. Another one that worked out, but didn't really quite hit that upside that I was hoping for. A great matchup with Cleveland. No Leonard Fournette. He'd been getting kind of hot. He had the yardage, 9 targets, caught all 9 of them, but just didn't get in the end zone. But 15 points, you'll definitely take that. I'm happy with it. But I was really hoping for more. And then this one really pains me because in week 11, I made Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson starts of the week, but I really leaned Brian Robinson against the Texans, thinking that he would really ground and pound. And Brian Robinson didn't really have a good game. He had like 50 yards or something. So then week 12, I only said, I don't think I talked about Brian Robinson. I think I really just brought up Antonio Gibson, who was the running back 40 on the week, 6.9 points. Meanwhile, this guy, Brian Robinson, has the nerve to go out and be the running back 4 on the week. Caught a touchdown. That should have gone to Gibson. Anyways, that backfield is a little bit confused. There's production to go around, but from now on, I'm just going to say start the backfield. Just a coin flip of who's actually going. Moving on, I kind of did a similar Gibson Robinson tactic when I said to start Metcalf, Lockett, both Seattle Seahawks wide receivers. DK Metcalf, 14.5 points. Only the wide receiver 18, but again, no bye weeks this week. 15 targets, caught 11 of them for 9 yards. Just didn't get in the end zone, but again, you will definitely take that. Tyler Lockett, he did get in the end zone, but he only had 3 receptions. And they were actually back-to-back right here, so within 0.2 points of each other. 14.3 for Tyler Lockett. So, jeez. I just got the hiccups. That was weird. Anyways, moving on. Amari Cooper. Not a signature blow-up performance, but 12. If you would have told me before the week he's getting 12 targets, I would never, ever say to sit him. Caught 7 for 94. Again, no bye weeks, but he was still a wide receiver too. 12.9 points. You'll take it. I would say the last week was probably one of our best weeks. It was probably one of our best weeks. And then Terry McLaurin, not even going to be further down. It's never a good thing when you got to press load more to try to find them. Terry McLaurin, yeah, that was a tough one. I mean, 4 for 48. Obviously, you're hoping for more. He had, it's not a good week. Not a good week. Good matchup, right process. It just wasn't his week. But wide receivers they're up and down. And in a similar situation, I think I would start him again. I don't think you need to go away from Terry, just because he's been actually pretty solid this year. And then Gerald Everett. Listen, if you saw my last video, on Thanksgiving I couldn't record the video before Thanksgiving. I was going to make Hawkinson, Dalton Schultz, and Dawson Knox my tight end starts of the week. So Hawkinson, what's going on? He was the tight end 6. I didn't actually say he was the start of the week because I didn't record until after he played. Same with Dalton Schultz. He was a tight end 1 on the week, and I could have given you that advice, but instead you just have to figure it out for yourself. But then, luckily, not recording the video before Thanksgiving also made it so I didn't tell you to start Dawson Knox. But I would have been 2 out of 3, both, and the 2 that I would have got right would have been top 6. So that's unfortunate, but I had to pivot off of them. So I just went with Gerald Everett as one of them. It was a good matchup, but I even said I'm not super confident, but just with the people who have already played, he was an okay bet to maybe against the Cardinals. Just didn't really work out. Then Foster Moreau. I said to start him. Luckily, he got in the end zone. Only 3 catches. We'll take it, I guess. But I'm just really sad that I didn't get to record that video before Thanksgiving. Because man, I really would have loved to make those calls for you guys. Because you would have realized how much of a fantasy football prodigy that I am. But anyways, this is a longer video. I'm sorry about that, but I got lots of good advice in this one. So I think last week was maybe arguably my best start of the week calls of the season, even without counting Dalton Schultz and Hawkinson, who I wanted to put in the video. So if I would have done that, you would have had to subscribe. But now, since I didn't get those in the video, I would have just at least consider subscribing. And we're just going to progressively get better and better at making these calls throughout the season as we make the playoffs. Because once the playoffs arrive, you really got to lock it in. That being said, thank you guys for watching. I really, really appreciate it. Please make sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and good luck in fantasy this week, and I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.